Welcome back to the catch of the day. This is what I'm attempting to answer some of y'all's questions. It's impossible. I'll never catch up on all of them, and I apologize. But the first question comes from Chichen Lo, probably Japan. Yeah, because he does mention Biwa, Lake Biwa, which I've been fortunate enough to fish in Japan. But he asked the question, the highest level bass question ever. I love their translations because usually they're much more beautiful than the actual English translation. Why do the biggest bass only pair up in schools of uniformly the same size of big bass only? For example, groups of 5-pounders or a group of 15 to 20 pounders in Lake Biwa. And that last little deal, groups of 15 to 20 pounders, impressed me because they did eventually. I was there a long time back. They didn't have that size fish in there, and they eventually did transport some of the Florida F1s and Texas F1s into Biwa. And they probably lynched the guys that did it because the commercial fishery there are very anti-bass fishing. But they did start to have some big ones, and there was actually a verified world record caught in Biwa. So he's not exaggerating a lot when he says 15 to 20 pounders. But why do they group together size? I'm not sure I'm biologically qualified to answer that. I mean, I'm going to answer it from just my own experiences. I don't know if I really know the answer to that. I mean, I know that those size fish demand a bigger type food source. So they're not going to be running around with a bunch of little bass that's eating little tiny food. And so there has to be a food source there that will support that kind of fish. And it's either big tilapia over there or some other type of fish that grows abundantly that will support big fish. Because if you don't have the food source, you're not going to have that many big fish. There has to be a food source there to support them, so there has to be that there. And as time goes by, laws of nature, a big fish doesn't waste as much energy chasing tiny stuff. So they're all going to be around chasing, where the bigger food source is. And they work together. Bass, especially in lakes where you have abundant food sources, they work together. I know y'all guys have seen National Geographics where you see killer whales working together to hunt seals and other types of food. And so it's just something in nature that they help each other for the food that they need. That's not a complete answer, and I apologize. It is an interesting question. Happy Johnson. Would you ever consider being a mentor for a competitor trying to make it to the elites? I've indirectly done that, but it's obviously been by convenience where I grew up with, I lived where some of these younger anglers lived, and I met them, and Cody Huff would be an example. And I wanted to find mentor, though. A lot of these younger kids, they're in the elites, they're not just looking for how to catch fish. Yes, they want to talk about that, and they want you to. Nowadays, they can read every way I've ever caught a fish on social media. But what they don't understand is the business of the sport, how to approach sponsors, how to deal with the politics, how to deal with other anglers that are trying to con you out of what you found. And so there's a whole political side to these tournaments. And there's a business side to them. And that's more the mentoring I do than anything. For example, and I'll use this because I'm kind of starting to work with another angler here, and is how do you get sponsors is one of their biggest questions. And I tell them, they get 100 letters a day, people wanting sponsors, okay? So the only way and most of those letters are asking for something. I would like you to run your boat, or I'd like to have some of your lures. Don't send them a letter, introduce yourself, Tell them what you're planning on doing this coming year tournament-wise, but don't ask for a single thing. Just say, I want to introduce myself. I'm going to keep you informed on my progress. Here's my goals. Here's what I want to do in the future. And I just want to get you to get to know me. And if you do that and you do it right and all of a sudden, because performance eventually is what controls your future, your performance. And that's the thing you have to work on the most. And just keep them informed. And sure, even if they're getting 100 letters a day, if you're performing at a high level and they notice that and you've never asked them for a thing, there will be a point in time that every sponsor will say, I would like another angler, one like him. So that's kind of what my mentorship involves. Flat Rock Woods, interesting name, I guess. Can you elaborate on what you learned that magical day during your All-American win on Lake Havasu? Yeah, that was really a epiphany day for me, to be honest. I was really into a lot of my meditation at that point. I was in the big middle of it. I was studying it. I was studying, intuition. I was studying versus intellect versus ego, which all of them play a role, and all of them can play a positive role, but some of them won't eventually start playing a negative role. And I was to a stage where I understood when the ego was really sending me the wrong direction, and I was starting to understand intuition at a much higher level, where it really was coming from, and how to be aware of it, and so these are things that it's impossible to explain in one little answer here. But intuition then, in that tournament, won it for me totally. I mean, and intuition, and let me put intuition in a simpler context. All fishermen have gut feelings. And that's what really, I don't care, it goes back to, I've heard that from the beginning of time when I joined clubs. I had a gut feeling to change this lure, to try this. And is that really intuition? Or where's that coming from? It's the greatest minds on this planet have been searching for the answer to that. Albert Einstein, that's one of his greatest journeys, was trying to figure out where some of his greatest breakthroughs in physics came from. He was convinced it did not come from a logical mind. He was convinced it was coming from another source. And of course, that's where it can get tricky on you. What is that other source? And there's imposters. And so how do you recognize the imposter over the... But you were smart enough to be aware of that tournament, so I'm going to give you this kind of answer. It's not going to complete answer. I don't have a complete answer myself, and I'm still, doing what I've always been doing. David DeFebaugh. I think we were just around each other in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And it was a great show at Albert Marine in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Fishing show, one of the first ones of the year. And I'm always kind of ready to do a few of those, then I can get burned out on them pretty quick. But that one was great. But he asked, how come you haven't written the bestseller book yet, Unlocking the Mind of Rick Clunn? You own an off-the-water storytelling. Well, thank you, David. It's mesmerizing. I've been asked that by my wife and other people, my children, and what I just answered was the first question about Havasu is part of that, and because it's a never-ending story, and the one thing I work hard is that working with outdoor media and working with media is not allowing them to ever write the final chapter, because if you do, then things change. And I don't want to write my final chapter yet, because I'm still in the middle of it. All right, I know maybe toward the end's more accurate, but still I'm not at the end. So, and that's part of the reason I like this, because it does provoke a lot of that in me, and And I'm so impressed that some of the questions, like the Havasu question, that was in the late 80s when I won the Red Man All-American, which a lot of people don't even know I won the Red Man All-American. This gentleman, it's in his logbook somewhere. So, and it's fun. It's fun to go back in time, even with the questions. Brian, boy, you guys, can y'all have Rick? Well, Clunn's not any better. Brian Luetkemeyer. You never hear of anyone catching bass on a spinnerbait anymore. Why is that? It's true. I mean, now I've made the statement maybe too often in the last several years, where have all the good spinnerbait fishermen gone? They're not there anymore. And that's, I don't know all of them, so that's a very big generalization on my part, but I don't know any great spinnerbait fishermen anymore. I don't know the Elroy Krugers. I don't know the Bobby Murrays and Billy Murrays. They're not there anymore. And everybody's going Kevin Van Dam, and you. No, neither one of us are great spinnerbait fishermen. We both basically have two ways of fishing a spinnerbait. And in fact, the last time that there was a major announcement of spinnerbait being used was when I won in 2019, the final day. I had 5 fish that weighed almost 35 pounds. And every one of them came on a Trickster spinnerbait. 3/4 ounce perched skirt with a sparkle ringworm on the back. Every one of those fish I caught that final day, 2 9+s, came on that spinnerbait except one of the 9s, and he missed it. The spinnerbait showed me him. He missed it, and I immediately picked up a worm, threw back in there, and caught him. So it's still a lot, and just to give you the keys to what's missing with the spinnerbaits nowadays is understanding the real reason they hit a spinnerbait. There is one guy I'm going to give a little bit of credit to about, and he even made the statement one time that the spinnerbait was the original Alabama rig, a much smaller version. But then I said, you know, he's kind of right. It's got all these blades that look like menace on it. You know, it's got you know, that's the skirt's got a skirt. We put rubber trailers on the back of them, so it looks like more than one fish, kind of like the Alabama rig. And it's Guy Eaker. Guy Eaker, he fished a spinnerbait almost religiously, and he understood blade water displacement. If you don't listen to anything I say about spinnerbait, learn blade water displacement. Willow leaf is the most popular, but it has the least blade water displacement. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying water displacement, heavy water displacement is what attracts and catches big fish. And that's why the Colorados and the Indianas and the Trickster long drop blade, which was a combination I designed from Indiana and a willow leaf mixed together. So, and I think there's some good ones out there, but see, a lot of baits now are taken over from the spinnerbait, and I think they like that. I like it, because there ain't as many people throwing it.